Good morning, everyone. I have only 15 minutes, so I'll keep my remarks very brief and try to answer a couple of questions from the audience. I want to congratulate RJC, first of all, on an outstanding turnout for breakfast. I don't remember this many people being here for breakfast before. And I've been here 15 years already. It's just a wonderful event every year, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I'll get straight to the point. We're all talking about anti-Semitism in the conservative movement and what to do about it. And to some extent, boundaries need to be set around what kinds of associations conservative organizations will allow themselves to make. You saw the backlash late last week when the Heritage Foundation put out a video defending Tucker Carlson and his decision to interview Nick Fuentes. I'm not sure why Heritage needed to make that video, but there was an immediate backlash against Heritage from supporters, from employees, saying we actually don't want to be associated with people who don't share our values. So that has to happen. But there's something else that needs to happen as well, and that's the topic of my recent book, which has a provocative title, The Zionist Conspiracy Wants You. And I wrote the book a few years ago anticipating the growth of anti-Semitism on the right. And I'm sorry to say that I was correct about it. But what I'm trying to say to a conservative audience, and to a general audience as well, is that Israel has lessons for you, whether you care about the Middle East or not. The positive example of Israel's success can be channeled into anything, whether into business strategy, into political strategy, into personal growth. There are so many lessons that individuals and groups and movements can learn by studying the positive lessons of Israel. One of the most important lessons that conservatives care about, whether they're pro-Israel or not, is how do we address the collapsing birth rate in our country? And the only Western society today that has a birth rate above replacement, that is above 2.1 children per woman, is Israel. How did Israel achieve a birth rate that will ensure the continuity of Israeli civilization without mass immigration? And that's the question that Americans need to be asking, in addition to all the other things we know that we care about when it comes to Israel, like technological innovation and military partnership. The people who care about family values are also some of the people who are Israel's critics right now, and it is from a position of ignorance. So what are we doing to invest in the positive message? We've spoken a lot about which negative messages, which messengers to exclude, and that's appropriate. William F. Buckley he didn't kill them. He kicked out the John Birch Society from the conservative movement. And we're at a similar moment now. Ted Cruz alluded to that on the first day of the conference. But what are the positive messages? Are we investing in companies like JNS? Are we investing in fellowships, the way Alan Alavi and Diana have invested in fellowships for students to come here? Are we creating trips to Israel for young professionals? These are all avenues we can move in. And what lessons are we sharing? And to me, that's the most positive thing. And I'll close my remarks just with an observation, and then I'll open it for 10 minutes of questions. Today, I'm going back to LA. I'm visiting my house for the first time in 4 months. My house is the last one standing on my corner. My neighborhood was destroyed in the Palisades fire. And when the fire happened, there was an international effort to send firefighters, and only 3 countries participated: Canada, Chile, and Israel. And the Israeli firefighters came to our neighborhood and to Malibu and to Altadena and Pasadena, and they studied what California firefighters were doing, and they imparted the lessons of fighting fires in Israel. And they also brought Israeli tech companies that are bringing firefighting technologies. There's a new one that our community is considering called Fire Dome, which is based on the Iron Dome and which shoots projectiles loaded with fire retardant at any detected fire on a perimeter. That's the positive lesson of Israel, that Israel is reaching out to countries, even wealthy, developed countries like the United States, and sharing the positive lessons of how it has learned from its own tragedies, its own wildfires, its own experiences. I think about Israel's experience in rebuilding restaurants that were blown up in terrorist bombings. And I think about how my neighbors, despite Gavin Newsom and despite Karen Bass, my neighbors are getting together to rebuild our community. So that's the positive side of Israel that we have to share, and that's why I wrote The Zionist Conspiracy Wants You, because Zionism, with a lowercase z, is the principle that each of us can transform our lives. And we can do so by following the way in which Israel transformed the lives of the Jewish people. So let me try to answer a few questions about media, about Zionism, about conservatism, whatever. We've got, until Shabbos, we've got about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll give the floor to Shabbos. Yes.
Any questions for Joe Pollak? I got a mic.
I'm from California, not far from where you live, and Trump derangement syndrome is so high now that you cannot even say the word Trump without starting a firestorm. I no longer can wear my MAGA hat outside. Forget about the Jewish star. I can't wear my bloody MAGA hat for being fearful because I support Donald J. Trump, who is my leader and the one Hashem has chosen to lead us. What can you do to stop the damn Trump derangement syndrome in California? All these people are Jewish, they're Democrats, they're old friends, they're wealthy, they're intelligent, and they continue to buy into this crap.
Right. So the question was about Trump derangement syndrome in California. You know, when President Trump came to Pacific Palisades 3 days after he was inaugurated, and he met with me and members of the community that have been affected by the fire, we live in a community that's considered conservative for Los Angeles because only 75% of the voters chose Kamala Harris. So, you know, maybe it was a bit friendlier than he might have found elsewhere, but I'm sure that all of my neighbors voted for Democrats and voted for Newsom and Kamala Harris, and they did not expect to like President Trump. And when he came in and he heard their stories, and he said to Mayor Karen Bass, if you go on C-SPAN, you'll find the video, he said, "Why aren't you listening to these people? Why aren't you letting them get to their lots and clear out the rubble and start building their homes?" And a light switched on in my neighbors' heads, and they said, holy smoke, this guy gets us. This guy is fighting for us, and the people we've elected are not fighting for us. And so there is a change that's happening. But very briefly, what we lack in California is a media that can reflect back to the citizens of California what's actually going on in the state. So you have local media, LA Times, very left-wing, even under new management, San Francisco Chronicle, and aside from that, there's nothing. It's just national media. So Gavin Newsom's going to win on Tuesday with the redistricting proposal because he's made it about Trump. And there is this Trump derangement syndrome. If there were an outlet that could say, California deserves better than this, you're disenfranchising voters in California by redrawing the district to eliminate half the Republican seats. You know, it's a funny way to defend democracy by eliminating the ability of the opposition to compete. Nobody is saying that to them, but that is going to change. There are new media outlets coming out, so watch this space.
Hang on for one or two more questions.
Sorry.
Over here first, please.
Good morning. I want to thank you and I want to thank the RJC for taking this strong and principled position to say that as Jewish people and as well as a country, we are being threatened not only from the far left, which is true, which is in Congress and particularly, it's much more so than Republicans, but by some in the conservative circles like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and and Nick Fuentes, who they call Adolf Fuentes. I'm also very concerned about who's working in the office of J.D. Vance, and that is Buckley Carlson, who's Tucker Carlson's son, and which kind of espouses the isolationist views of many on the right. What do you think can be done to advocate and to help stop them?
I have no concerns about J.D. Vance. And, you know, in 2028, there will be many Republican contenders for the presidency. I know that Marco Rubio is thinking about a run. J.D. Vance is probably thinking about a run. I am not concerned about J.D. Vance. You mentioned the isolationists in his office. Last year, Senator Vance went to the Quincy Institute, which is the isolationist think tank, and he told this think tank, which is against any foreign intervention, that the United States will always remain solidly with Israel. And he went into the lion's den and he told them that. I understand people are upset about what happened at Ole Miss University and the response he gave to some of the questions, but he had just come back from a 3 or 4 day visit to Israel with his family. I think we need to be sensitive to anti-Semitism, but not hyper-reactive to anti-Semitism. That doesn't mean that everybody gets a blank check, but I do think that he's done the necessary things and gone and taken on the difficult fights where he deserves the benefit of the doubt. Again, that doesn't mean you trust everything a politician does from now on, but I am not concerned about J.D. Vance based on what he said. He could have answered the questions better, but I think his heart is with Israel and the U.S.-Israel alliance.
Yeah, last question for Joel Pollak.
Hi, on your prior remark, by the way, my name is Sharona Justman. I'm from California. I also live in a neighborhood in the Pacific Palisades that was devastated and my house stands, but the place around me is all gone. You mentioned that Gavin Newsom doesn't care because we can't respond to the Trump derangement syndrome. But the Republican leadership in California does not receive money from the National Republican Party because the National Republican Party considers California to be a lost cause. We have to turn that around. We need the money to be allocated to California, and we need to tell all of our folks that we know to allocate money so that we can fight a better fight, even under the redistricting that will probably take place, because we have to regain ground. We can't just lie down and say, oh, well, it is what it is. Could you tell us what we can do to get the Republican National Party to help California?
That's a great question, and I will say that California Republicans have taught Republicans in other states one very important thing, which is how to react when Democrats change the rules of voting. So Democrats made ballot harvesting legal in California in 2016, and they won several seats. Republicans came back and did ballot harvesting to Democrats in 2018 and won back some of those seats. And Democrats complained, but the Republicans just said, it's your law. All we're doing is following your rules. So that's how you have to play. And I do think California Republicans can teach other Republicans that lesson. We have an opportunity in California with the upcoming presidential election. I know it's a long way off, and I still want to see this presidency through before we even start thinking about that. But there's going to be an intense primary contest in the Republican Party in 2028. And because Gavin Newsom moved the primary date in California earlier, at least for Democrats, I'm not sure. We have a jungle primary system, so it's probably earlier for Republicans in a presidential year as well. There's going to be an intense primary contest that comes to California. That's the opportunity for Republicans to build the election infrastructure in California that can be used again in the general election. So I would suggest that California Republicans really take this primary process seriously and get ready for a good, fair fight with debates in California and make that infrastructure permanent so that California Republicans can then go to the GOP on a national level and say, we now have the machine to turn out the vote because we've excited people about this exciting primary coming up. Thank you. Vote no on Prop 50. Even if it loses, vote no on Prop 50, even if it wins. Yes, sometimes you got to show up even in a cause that looks like it's going to lose. Look, ask the LA Dodgers about losing causes, right? Ninth inning home run. All right, thank you, everyone.
Please thank Joel Pollak, everyone.
Thank you.